and some of the improvements he made are going to give a net result for him. And it just hasn't happened yet. They see signs of it and are hopeful that it does translate to the games.
There's our friend Derrick Goold from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch joining us right now. I'm going to start real positive too, Derrick. Good to see you as always. And how damn good does Sonny Gray look right now? We'll go over some lows, but on the highs, that's a great signing so far.
Yeah, and he's doing it all while he's still kind of building pitch count, which adds to kind of how impressive it's been. He went more than a month without being in an actual like kind of game situation or game speed. He did some simulated stuff, he did some backfield stuff, but as far as like being in front of fans and being in that uncontrolled setting, he went more than a month. Some of that was weather, some of that was just availability. And then he went to them and said, look, I can do the final stages of this on the job. I can do it in the rotation, and I can do it in such an effective and efficient way that it really doesn't tax the bullpen. They kept Zach Thompson aside for 2 of his starts just to cover some of the innings, and he was so efficient and really so expedient with his stuff, and effective too, of course, that he didn't need it. They didn't need the long relievers. So he off to a good start. Shutout until just the final batter he faced. He had not allowed a run as a Cardinal until the final guy he faced yesterday. And along the way there, he had 12 strikeouts to get there. Very impressive opening 3 starts for him.
Well, I do love all the positive talk, but at the same time, we do got to, nip it in the bud here, talk about Paul Goldschmidt a little bit here. I've from playing against Paul, I understand he does go through his lulls, but it's never in the beginning of the season, from what I recall. He does happen to have it during the season. He'll go 3 weeks where it's like, where the heck did he go? And then all of a sudden he'll take off, batting 179 right now. A little over a strikeout a game too as well. Can you talk a little bit about his struggles and what he's going through, and if there's something that he's been doing to try and fix this a little bit?
Yeah, that's a big topic, and obviously, like, it sometimes is how you want to cut and carve up the stats, right? Like back in 20, I just looked this up here to answer a question for readers over at the Post-Dispatch, and back in 2022 on this same date, he was hitting 196, and he had yet to hit his first home run of the season, and of course, by the end of that season, he was the National League MVP. He's had slower starts before, but you're right. I mean, there's not like April's always a slow start. There's you can pick a month out of some of the years and go, well, this is where he kind of encountered some problems, just as you can pick one out and say this is where he surged. It's hard to say, though, that this is just related to the beginning of the season, because he also was searching a bit during spring training. And I know that we as a group and as an industry like say, hey, don't put too much stock in spring training. And that's true. Obviously, you guys know it better than I do, but don't put a whole lot of stock in the box scores. Put a whole lot of stock in the process or the feel or the timing of spring training. And he's been searching, and he's acknowledged that. He talked with reporters. I wasn't there Friday night. I was at a family function. I was returning, but he spoke with reporters at Busch Stadium on Friday night about how he feels it. Like, he feels there's been times where he could change the game offensively and hasn't. He was pretty honest and blunt and somewhat brutal on evaluating his own play. But then, like, added onto this, like, look, there's a lot of work being done in the cage to find that timing, to find that swing, to find that feel, that Nolan Arenado seems to have done. It wasn't 2 weeks ago that he was also searching, then hits a home run in Arizona and really has taken off since then. Goldschmidt is looking for that same kind of return on the field for the progress he feels he's making off the field. And a lot of that has to do with, pitch recognition and timing, which just is something that it seemed like he was searching for in Florida and brought into this regular season.
Derek, you know what you should have him do? You should have him get one of those giveaway hats the Cardinals had the other day.
Like Lance Ward?
Yeah,
like Lance
have one of those. Exactly. Yeah, give him one of those and have him take batting practice or something. If you haven't seen it, it's like a Cardinal head with the little feet hanging down. I mean, I kind of got to feel like I need one of those. So, Derek,
I asked if that was their City Connect hat. I was told no.
You were told no?
That's not the City Connect hat. No, they have a different.
That'd be awesome if it was. And the hitters had the little, feet dangling in front of their eyes. It'd be awesome. But what do you take away? I mean, from this past series, yes, Sonny Gray pitched well, but they also got swept by the Brewers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
in Busch. So what do you take away from that? Because going into the year, the Cardinals were the favorite, and everyone's like, "Oh, the Brewers are down," but Cardinals are 9-13 again in last place, and the Brewers are kind of starting to, they're putting distance between themselves and the Cardinals, and we're not even into May yet.
Yeah, they didn't really take the chance to make a statement as to where they expect to be in the division. The Brewers played better baseball. They played more opportunistic baseball. They found ways to find runs. It wasn't like there were, with the exception of the one game where Miles Mikolas did not pitch well and gave up a lot of runs, there weren't a whole lot of runs to be had in the other two games. And the Brewers just proved to be more advantageous, more opportunistic. They just played better baseball. And that used to be the hallmark of the Cardinals, and they want it to be the hallmark of the Cardinals again. But I think, without much offense, it's put such an emphasis on everything else being so perfect. And it's the opposite of what the Cardinals expected. The Cardinals expected their offense to be able to carry this team a while. They thought they had a really strong and deep and diverse mix of OPS and OBP and slug offense. And they thought they would have depth too when you look at what Jordan Walker in his second year could do, but he would be in the bottom third of the lineup. What is expected of Lars Nootbaar, and he's only just back from the fractured ribs he had in spring training. They thought that the offense would be good enough to carry them at times and maybe overcome other areas where there were mistakes. Instead, it's left them to have to play this zero defect precision baseball elsewhere to win games, to create runs, to conjure runs. I mean, there was a game they won where they scored 3 runs and only one of them was the result of a hit. Otherwise, it was sacrifice flies, sacrifice bunts, walks, catcher's interference involved in it. So, the Brewers they were sharper, fine-tuned, more opportunistic. And I think the Cardinals fans, certainly this was their first division series. It was at home, weekend series, a lot to like about that. They had a chance to announce their presence in the division. And instead, they just had more of the same from last year, and that's left them pretty frustrated. Oliver Marmol talked about that after the game yesterday, that it just was a disappointing series because they felt like they were on the cusp of a couple of those games and just couldn't quite come through with the necessary hit. They're not hitting for a lot of damage and they're not hitting for a lot of timing, and that puts them in a spot where everything else just has to be pristine for them to win.
I know it's become a storyline for years now, but I'll bring it up even though he got hurt on a freak accident. You know what I'm going to say? And I talked in the offseason about Tyler O'Neill. I'm like, he's going to go to Boston and have a good year. He got hurt. He collided with Devers. It's a freak injury. But he looked damn good before he went down. So is there any chatter about evaluating themselves as an org and saying, why do we have certain players that are exiting that are full of tools and then they go to the next stage and they become a star? I know early for Tyler, we're only a few weeks into the season, but we have examples here and it's becoming a thing, and everyone was joking about it in the offseason, and he was leading the league in homers right before he went down.
Yeah. I mean, it's not early because the Randy Arozarena and Adolis Garcia, I mean, we can point to these guys who didn't get opportunities. Tyler's different in the sense that he did get opportunity. A year ago at this time, the Cardinals were like, okay, we're going to give you a run in center field, which was something that he wanted and something that when they look back on was maybe not mutually beneficial, that if he had just stayed in left and they'd committed to that spot, that maybe that season starts going differently for him. But they'll never know. But he wanted the chance at center field. They liked how he profiled there. So they did give him that opportunity. That sets him apart a little bit from Arozarena and Garcia. But those are still examples, and you can go down the pitching route too. Though it's a little bit more difficult because they so desperately needed a cleanup hitter, and the Marlins had those the hitters to trade, and the Cardinals knew that it was going to cost a bit, and it did, Gallen and Alcantara, to get that deal done. With Tyler, what you're right. I mean, it does force them to do something they already were, like audit the opportunities that they're giving them, audit the commitments they're making and how rigid they are with those and who are they missing as a result. You see an example of how they're committed to, they went into the season trying to commit to the outfield. Injuries have had a way with that, but that was a reflective and somewhat of like, okay, look, we can't like say, we're going to move from this guy to this guy. We're going to go matchups here and here. and and limit their production, and then limit to a point where they don't get the opportunity, and then watch them flourish elsewhere when they do get that opportunity. So you see some of the decisions that they made this winter that were reflective of that. But you also, to your point, see the kind of humor that they had, because look, when they, at the winter meetings, when it became clear that they were going to Tyler ONeal, and they acknowledged that they were looking for an interested team in Tyler ONeal, John Mozeliak said he's going to go and get MVP votes. We just know that's how this works. So they're aware of it, and they're trying to figure out that right balance of like, okay, how do you make sure that the opportunities that some of those players didn't get with the Cardinals happen with the Cardinals, or how do they get the return on a trade like that so that it does free up that opportunity for others.
Derek, you mentioned that opportunities. Victor Scott was given the opportunity this year, and they recently sent him down because we talked about it. The Cardinals need offense. Two of their best hitters are both catchers, so they need a third catcher to cover them. Is this a move that is going to last? Or, I mean, Pedro, I don't know how to say it. Is it Pages? Is it like
Pages.
How do you? Okay, well, is he
Pages.
Is he going to stick?
Well, I mean, look, on the horizon, they have Matt Carpenter coming back, so that there would seem to be the roster move there. Also, like, they have been encouraged over the past, week, 5 days, and they'll know more by the end of this homestand, which comes Wednesday, Thursday, about how close Dylan Carlson is to returning. And then right behind him would be Tommy Edman, possibly. And those are the two center fielders that they had, 1 and 2, on their depth chart. Tommy Edman was the center fielder they committed to in December. Dylan Carlson was the guy who won the job in spring training with Tommy Edman on the injured list. And then, of course, collided with a teammate, separated his shoulder, and had to start the year on the IL. So that move was in part, it was mostly an indication that they're going to look at Lars Nootbaar in center field here for a while, for the reason that you're discussing, that offensive aspect. But it also subtly suggests that they think Dylan could be on the horizon as far as going off to a rehab assignment and then turn around to be their starter in center field. So the third catcher thing, they'll go in with it now because they do need offense, but they don't think that they think they can have both those catchers in the lineup even without a third catcher. And they actually have it set up in a way, when you look at the bench, to have Herrera either catch or be the DH on the day that they're facing a lefty, and also have Contreras in the lineup. And then what will happen later in a game is they'll give up the DH because they feel like they have the bench set up in such a way, when Carpenter's healthy, to then make those moves and treat it like a National League game. It's actually something that they openly discussed and actively pursued in setting up their ideal roster, was having Herrera in the lineup against lefties.
Derek, are the Cardinals boring? And let's just even put the record aside. It's not terrible yet to start the year, but it's not great. It's not a good start. They're 9-13. Last year, I felt like power rankings, number 1 most boring team was the Giants. You would hear it from other fans too, and their fans were certainly complaining about it. And some of that had to do with the way that they were operating. They switched their processes with a different manager. Do you feel like the Cardinals are up there right now? Just not a lot of flash in any spots, a lot of kind of safe players, or is that unfair for fans to say?
No, I don't think it's unfair. I mean, I think it's interesting because I think they have been that team. I've talked a lot with fans, or even with other reporters and some of y'all, I'm sure. I think back to some of the conversations I've had on the podcast I do, just about how can this team capture the imagination of the fan base? However you want to attach that. I guess in this past week, given that the St. Louis and the Cardinals and baseball fans writ large, with Whitey Herzog's passing, we talk a lot about like how innovative his style of play was, and charismatic was the word that I tried to use to hopefully use to describe that game. I mean, it was captivating, right? The Whitey ball of the 1980s, and the present Cardinals are always kind of compared back to that. And so I wonder about that. Like, can this team, or has it had years where it captured the imagination, where it was charismatic, where it was energetic? Look, losing is never charismatic. Losing without offense, you guys know, like, man, like, how many games did AJ, I'll ask you that, like, how many games did you play where, man, you thought you were just giving every effort because you played at 120%, I guess is what you'd say, but because the offense was kind of sluggish, it left it feeling like kind of lagging, right? Like it's not a lack of like oomph that leads to it. Sometimes it's a lack of offense that just gives off this perception that it is dull, because a lack of offense is dull. That said, like I don't know if you could watch Sonny Gray pitch and go, man, this is a boring game, or this is a boring pitcher, or has the potential to be a boring team. I don't know if you could watch Mason Wynn play shortstop and go, man, that's boring, because it's not. I mean, he's had an excellent start to the season, and in a lot of ways, if he personifies what the Cardinals want to be, and if they can get there, then that is an entertaining team. That is an energetic team. But any team that lacks offense really comes across as kind of like sluggish and dull because of all those donuts they're hanging up on the scoreboard, to borrow a phrase from Mike Matthews.
But before I get to my question, I have two things to add of your comment. One, you can only give 100%. So anyone who gives, like Jake Peavy used to say, giving 127%, I'm like, where do you find the extra 27? I don't know. You can figure it out, Derrick. Let me know. I mean, you can only give everything you've got. You can't, unless I can take some of your energy, then maybe I can get there. But, and then second of all, you're talking about, boring team. Yeah. Guess what? You can have the best team in the world. You can have the funnest team in the world. You can have the most, chemistry perfect team in the world. If you don't get any hits, you don't score any runs, everyone's like, this team sucks, it's boring. So what you said there, totally agree. And then my real question, though, is Jordan Walker. We haven't even talked about him. He's struggling. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. Is there thought of maybe sending him down like they did last year to get him going? I know last year they wanted him to hit more fly balls, but right now he has 0 homers. He's, 164. I mean, it hasn't been a great start for the young kid either.
Yeah, they're balancing that, and it is part of the. I mean, they can send him down, and they can get him a bunch of at bats there. And they talked here recently about what he's doing away from the field and where they're seeing steps made and progress made there, and he's not seeing it translate into the games. Back to Mason Wynn as an example of it. Some of the things that Mason was working on in spring, and working on in the cage and working on with hitting coaches, is now translating into games. Jordan just hasn't had that same experience yet. And it has to do with being open. It has to do with, lifting the ball, getting the ball in the air. They know that he has the ability, because of his size, because of his strength, because of his swing, to generate exit velocity. You don't have to go chasing it. He can generate it. So it's a matter of like, get the ball in the air on lives. And that's where damage kind of manifests for him. It's there for the taking. And they're all working with him there. And, part of that is how closed off he is at times, how open he is at times, getting that consistency. In the heat of the moment, especially when you walk up there and you see that batting average up there, you fall into some comfort, right? You fall into the swing that you're comfortable with and not necessarily the swing that you're working on. And so it's come down to, it's an ongoing conversation, but you hit on exactly the dilemma that they're at. What's best for him? Is it best for him to continue to work with the coaches here and then have to go into games and face the world's best pitchers? Or is it best for him to go and just get some confidence and work through things in the minors? I don't think there's a real clear-cut answer, especially when, what they're asking him to do is perform and produce at this level. And he needs the positive feedback of doing so to kind of reinforce that the work he's done and some of the improvements he made are going to give a net result for him. And it just hasn't happened yet. They see signs of it and are hopeful that it does translate to the games. If it doesn't, then it's back to your question. Where best for him to pursue that? And at time does he need just some positive reinforcement? And is that, just production, just to take a breath and go, okay, no, I can do this. In some ways, you were asking about Victor Scott. He's going to get that. I mean, he went straight from AA to the majors. Now, having been in the majors, goes back to AAA, gets some positive reinforcement, gets some production, steals some bases, gets on base, all those things. He'll probably be a more, that will be reassuring and that will be positive for him. Where does Jordan get that? That is a part of conversation for the Cardinals.
On this show, he's got to come on the show. 15 minutes, just have a good laugh with these guys. They can all talk about their struggles at some point in life in the game. And just put the smile back on the face, have fun out there. Remember how good you are, all that. So hopefully at some point it'll turn around for him,
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, he would be a junior in college at this age.
Yeah.
He was
22.
I mean, just to put that in perspective is, some of the swing changes and stuff that he would be working on, he would be doing so with an aluminum bat against college pitching. And instead he's doing it with a wood bat against the best pitchers in the world. I mean, it's a lot to ask.
In year 2, nonetheless. I mean, he's already 2 seasons into the bigs. It's crazy. Derrick, great to have you as always, dude. Thanks for swinging by. Read everything from Derrick, both, on Twitter, whatever you call it, and in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Derrick, good to see you, man.
Great to see you guys too. Thank you very much. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.